This is 9/11 Freefall.
Episode of 9/11 Freefall. I'm Andy Skill, the host, and tonight I'm going to be honored to be joined by Jes Stafford and Ted Walter. Jes Stafford is the president of his section of AIA over in Asheville, North Carolina. He's also a supporter of AE 9/11 Truth. And he's going to be talking tonight about the AIA resolution vote that's coming up in a few weeks. Of course, so is Ted Walter, one of our staff members here at AE 9/11 Truth, the engine behind this resolution vote. So they'll be going over that tonight, talking about the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence from Jes's perspective, and what you out there in the listening audience can still do, even at this stage of the whole process, to help support AE 9/11 Truth and trying to get this historic vote passed. All right, so you're going to want to listen to this one, see how you can participate and what's going on right now as we near the conference coming up in just a few weeks. Before I do play the interview, because this is another long one, we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families, and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that beginning now. And that is 10 seconds. Jes Stafford is an architect and small business owner with over 20 years of experience in the building and design industry. He's president of the Asheville, North Carolina chapter of the AIA, and his involvement with the AIA actually goes back even to his student membership when he was at Mississippi State University School of Architecture, where he earned his Bachelor of Architecture degree. So, Jes, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
And I also have Ted Walter. Ted is a public policy analyst by trade, as well as being the Director of Strategic Initiatives for Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Prior to his current role with AE, he was the Director of NYC CAN's High-Rise Safety Initiative, and he was a campaign manager for AE 9/11 Truth's Rethink 9/11 campaign. Ted has been active in advocating for a new 9/11 investigation since 2009 when he founded NYC CAN together with a group of 9/11 family members. He's been working hard ever since, and he's been working real hard with this AIA resolution, so I'm happy to have him back on to talk about where we are with that as we come closer to the conference time. Ted, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Okay, so we're going to get to know our new guest here a little bit more before we start getting into 9/11 and the reasons that we're all here to talk today. So, Jes, just to start off with, tell us more about your background. Fill in the gaps that I left in your introduction.
Well, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, which is where I was actually working when 9/11 happened. I've wanted to be an architect for a very long time, so it's great to be practicing what I dreamed of doing even as a kid. But it's just something that that I've always been interested in. My wife and I moved to Western North Carolina about 8 years ago, and this is where I've been practicing since then. And I still keep in touch with some friends and architects from back in Tennessee as well. My involvement with the AIA leadership here in the AIA Asheville chapter was, just came from my being involved with the section and going, and was invited to be on a 3-year leadership track, which starts as being president-elect and then this year is the president position, and then I'll be past president coming up in 2016. So it's fun. I like to be involved with keeping the local architects organized and having plenty of entertaining stuff to do and CEU units to get, and I'm lucky to be in Asheville. We have a very active chapter, and it's really an honor and humbling to be the leader there. In my practice, I do mostly custom residential stuff, like a lot of architects around here. Western North Carolina seems to be a very popular place for people building second homes and vacation homes and coming to retire, into a custom home. So custom residential architects are a pretty big deal here. And I do small commercial as well and have opportunities to diversify every now and then. So it's a good time, and I hope things are picking up around the country like they are here. It seems like all of the people that I talk with in the profession are doing well and getting more and more work and hiring a lot. So it's good to see things turning around.
Well, North Carolina is a beautiful state. I remember I drove through it a lot when I was going to college in Florida, and of course my family and everybody is in upstate New York, so that was quite a drive. So I guess North Carolina always symbolized sort of a getting over the hill here on my way back to Florida and knowing the trip was almost over, but it was also just a beautiful place to look out, very friendly people. So I've got really good memories of my brief times going through there. So congratulations for living there and being part of all the development taking place. Now, I've said it a lot of times on this show. There's people who became architects. I don't imagine many of them thought that an issue like this would come up, that they would have to be taking on something that has been made somewhat controversial by the media establishment, but should be the least controversial aspect of 9/11. People who want to become lawyers or politicians, figure, well, they may have to talk about some controversial things, but architecture seems like a pretty straight up practice, where you avoid such things. So I'm always curious to know this, especially with architects who signed the petition. How did you come to know about this issue, and what made you sign the petition and start speaking out about it?
Well, if we all sit around and wait for somebody else to speak up about something that we believe strongly about, it's a good possibility that no one will. So if there's anything that that I feel strongly about, I try to find some way to have a voice. Whether it's going on Twitter and trying to spread the words, or a Facebook page or something like that. So, if I can get through to an audience through that channel, that's good. So to actually have the opportunity to join with a bunch of other people that have seen the evidence and made their own decision about this particular issue, and co-sponsor this petition is for the resolution it's a nice opportunity to have, so you don't just feel like some lone guy, tweeting or putting posts on social media about, whatever issue that you feel strongly about. But, as far as learning about this and developing a knowledge of the evidence out there and coming to a conclusion about it, I got to say that AIA 9/11 truth.org played a very big part in that. There sometimes things just don't look right. And I think a lot of architects would, kind of relate to being very detail-oriented when it comes to visual evidence and really picking apart video, especially when something's recorded and you can watch it over and over again, that has to do with structures and buildings and structural failures. You can just see when something doesn't match the narrative. truth rings true, and you can tell when something passes the smell test, and on the other hand, you can just kind of tell when it doesn't. So a long time before I found AIA911truth.org online, I just started seeing some things that really looked questionable to my observations and knowledge about how buildings fail and things work. And I, did a little bit of research and listened to some, radio shows that had similar concerns and brought forth more evidence. And, eventually, I can't remember how, but I did come into going online and looking closer at the collection of evidence that AIA911truth.org came and put together and put online. And, there it was like a slam dunk for me, especially since it was comprised of a group of mostly, colleagues in the architectural and engineering fields who I share that sort of powers of observation with, and just curiosity about things, and really, applying sort of the scientific method to problems like this to try and get to the bottom of what's actually going on. So I hope I answered your question there.
You did, and I'm very curious about this. How much had you heard about Building 7 before you started looking into these particular issues related to 9/11? Because, here you go. You've got this 47-story steel frame high-rise allegedly collapsing in 7 seconds. This should be the biggest news in the architectural world for years to come after 9/11, but you hardly hear a peep about it in the corporate media. I want to know, how much did you guys hear about this prior to you waking up to the 9/11 truth-related stuff?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Building 7 was, for the most part, eclipsed, by the Twin Towers and all of the stories that had to do with the plane striking those, and of course the sad human element that came into the losses that came into the fold on that story. And it wasn't until I really started digging, and I can't remember since it's been so long, but I think it might have been the first thing that I saw was related to AIA911truth.org, or whatever that first YouTube video or whatever I saw led to the discovery of that website and everything that had to do with Tower 7.
Now, Ted, first of all, we talked before about the AIA resolution effort. However, I'm always conscientious that we may have new listeners, people who may not even know what this issue is about, may be hearing about this for the first time ever. So can you briefly remind our audience what the AIA resolution issue is all about, and give us some updates to where we are at this point with it?
Sure. So the AIA stands for the American Institute of Architects. And as you know, Jes here, he's the president of a local chapter of that organization, of the Asheville, North Carolina chapter. But it's a national organization that has roughly 83,000 members, architect members and associate architects and so on. And the reason why we're all here today is that in a few weeks' time, the AIA is having its national convention, which will be in Atlanta, Georgia. And what AIA911truth has done is mobilized a large number of our petition signers who are also members of the AIA to sponsor a resolution to be voted on at the convention at the annual business meeting on Saturday, May 16th. And the resolution that we've drafted and that 55 AIA911truth petition signers have co-sponsored calls upon the AIA to adopt a position statement supporting a new investigation into the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7. And so we, a little more than a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, we mobilized our petition signers to sponsor this resolution. It has been accepted, and basically the last month or so, in the next few weeks, will be all about reaching out to our fellow AIA members to ask them to support this resolution and to vote in favor of it. And so Jes is one of those people leading the charge and trying to educate fellow architects about the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7.
Now, how did you guys meet each other?
Yeah, I think we met speaking over the phone. We were engaged in reaching out to all of our AIA members who are AE 911 petition signers, and I believe I either called Jes or he called me back, and we made contact. And I was delighted to talk to him and learn that he was very supportive of the resolution and that he wanted to be a sponsor of it. And I think very conscientiously, he wanted to, being the president of Asheville AIA, he wanted to make sure that his fellow directors at the Asheville AIA chapter would be okay with him joining as a co-sponsor of this resolution. And so that was a matter that we discussed. And unfortunately, Jes could probably tell you a lot more about it than me, but they approved that, and Jes joined us as actually he was the 50th of our he was the 50th person to join as a co-sponsor of the resolution.
Well, that's cool.
That was great.
Yeah, it is, and that's how many you needed, 50. So number 50, and you got such a great person to do it too. Look at what he's doing here. So, Jes, tell us about your local AIA. Like, for instance, you mentioned before about how there's 3 positions that sort of get rotated through that you're kind of in the middle of right now. That you've got a president-elect position, you got a president position, and a former president position. Briefly tell us, how does your AIA work with regard to leadership of architects in the local area, and what kind of guidance do you guys give? And then also, talk about this issue related to that mission.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to make clear that my support of this resolution is independent of my involvement with AIA. It just, kind of happens that I'm also on that board of directors. And what Ted was saying is just a concern that I had before I could commit to being a co-sponsor. I wanted to bring, this issue before our board of directors, or what we really call the executive committee, to tell them the opportunity that I had, and a little bit about the organization, and just ask them, as a board, I'm looking for a general consensus that this is not going to be or would be a conflict of interest with my leadership position there. And they were all very supportive of it. 1 or 2 of them were actually familiar with the information and the resolution. And, they basically said that, what I do in my own profession is, as an individual, doesn't affect AIA Asheville. So it was all, go ahead with it. And but we have an executive committee that has the typical officers, including those 3 that you just listed that have to do with the presidency. And then, secretary, treasurer, and various directors that are also heads of, the committees that really make the wheels turn in AIA Asheville. And primarily what this leadership group does is just take care of the local governance of our chapter, the taking in the dues money, passing annual budgets and sticking to that, and making sure that we, are good custodians of those membership dues and spend them in ways that return value to the right about 200 members that we have in AIA Asheville. We are really focused on continuing education and providing opportunities for our members to do that through monthly section meetings. And we keep using the term chapter, and just from a kind of a picky nomenclature point of view, actually AIA North Carolina is defined as a chapter, and AIA Asheville, along with the other sub groups here in North Carolina, are known as sections. That's just, kind of an organizational quirk that I had to clear up. but we have the monthly section meetings where we have lunch at a local fellowship hall, and always have some sort of continuing education presentation. And then throughout the month, each month, we'll have lunch and learns. And then probably 3 or 4 times a year, we also have hard hat tours at local projects, so that architects that are members can go see buildings while they're in construction, which is always a great way to learn stuff. And there's what we call a drafting club, where we pair those after work meetings up with a happy hour somewhere, and just really try to concentrate on the continuing education and the fellowship within the profession, because we all like to get together and keep in touch with each other and learn about what we're doing and learn from each other in that process.
So, Jes, it seems like you're a guy who is concerned about your profession beyond just the means of making money. Obviously, you're involved with AIA, you're in the leadership there. You care about the integrity of your profession and what certain issues, the impact that those issues might have on your profession, it sounds like. So, with regard to this issue that this show covers every week, the controlled demolitions of Towers 1, 2, and 7, the evidence showing this, what do you think the impact has been on your profession regarding the reluctance by media and government to address this, the reluctance of certain official bodies that were tasked with investigating these things, or even ones that weren't tasked with investigating it but which have a duty to look into this because it's related to them in some way? What kind of impact do you think this is having on your profession?
Well, I think sad but true. As a whole, I think not only our profession, but generally anybody that has any kind of knowledge about this kind of stuff, it gets sort of bogged down, in day-to-day business operation and, the making money part, the making a living. And it's tough to be concentrated on this stuff and bulldogging it, and it's great to have an organization that's doing that can represent a collective of concern about this kind of stuff. I don't know. It's hard to speak for the whole profession. Personally, it's frustrating to see that our voice seems to be dismissed, and I think maybe not the entire profession, but at least the people who have signed up, and especially the core group that are co-sponsoring this resolution for the convention this year are coming together. So on the negative end of the spectrum, it's frustrating, and I think it has, kind of, it's bad to have our voice dismissed. But on the positive end, I think it's good. It's a good thing to work around and to have something to bring people together and have a common cause to work around to get make our voice get heard just through persistence and organization.
Ted, I know you're not an architect. However, you work very deeply and very you're very intimately involved with this project and with AE 9/11 Truth for several years. So do you want to comment on that in terms of this issue's impact on the integrity of the architectural profession?
Well, it's sort of a, like Jes said, it's hard to speak for the profession in general and how it's being impacted, certainly as myself not being an architect. Something, as Jes said before, something happened that doesn't pass the smell test as far as the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7, as well as the 2 other buildings that came down that day. And I think when something like that happens, and then a narrative evolves that really doesn't, that's not founded on evidence, and that doesn't pass the smell test, there are people in this world who have the expertise to look at the situation and say, no, this doesn't pass the smell test. And by and large, in the last 13, 14 years, that hasn't happened. Enough architects and engineers and others who should be able to look at this situation and say this narrative doesn't make sense, unfortunately haven't spoken out. And in certain ways, I think that, I don't want to say that undermines the integrity of the profession, but I think that, and I think that everybody that signed the AIA 9/11 petition would agree that architects and engineers have an ethical responsibility to raise their voice and say that this doesn't pass the smell test, and fires could not have brought down that 47-story steel framed high rise, and that's really the focus of and the core of our campaign as far as trying to get this resolution passed, is to tell our fellow architects that we believe, at least those of us who are sponsoring the petition, the resolution, that it's our ethical responsibility to speak out on this. And we hope that by sort of starting this spark, that it can turn into a flame and then a fire, and that more and more architects and engineers will have the courage to speak up and really demonstrate the integrity of the profession as it concerns what happened on 9/11.
Right, and just me personally speaking, I consider being encouraged to stay silent about something pretty close to almost being the same as being encouraged to endorse something. So, and with this case, this obvious, impossible official story, I mean, this challenging of people's common sense with regard to Building 7, of course, the Twin Towers also, but with Building 7, challenging of people's common sense and not creating an environment where people who know what they're talking about, I mean, people who have studied for years how these buildings are put up, how they're held together, how they stay up, and particularly how they stay up when random office fires break out inside them, creating an environment that discourages open communication about this issue. I consider that to be basically an insult to these people's professional backgrounds. I mean, why do we have experts in certain fields? We have them because we look to them for leadership on issues like this when something does come up. And I don't even necessarily blame so much the architectural field. I blame the government. I blame the media for creating this environment, this mass peer pressure system. And so I'm glad that folks like you exist, that you guys are speaking out and doing whatever you can to raise awareness of this issue and use the process, use these professional groups like the AIA here to shine a light on what happened that day, what really happened that day, and to get a dialogue going now. And I'm curious, Jess, I know that 10 years ago, it was a lot more difficult to talk about this issue than now. Do you find that more architects are willing to speak out about this now, or at least more willing to have a conversation about this now? What do you think of that assessment?
Yeah, I do. As time goes on, I think that there's a lot of things that people are starting to realize really haven't been for a long time the way that they've appeared, or the way that they've been sort of sold to us. So with that, this sort of gets rolled into that ball of wax. And in general, on this and other similar things where, really things are starting to unravel as far as the official story goes, people are more willing to discuss it, or at least have an open mind about it. There's less mental bias against it, or a normalcy bias, I guess you could say. And, I want to also pick up one thing Ted said about ethics and what we're ethically obligated to do. The code of ethics in any given state for licensed architects is usually a 3 or 4 page documents about what's, legal and what we have liability for, and how we're to work with our clients and for employers and this, that, and the other. But at the core of this, profession's ethical responsibilities is for the safety and welfare of the end users and the public that go in and out of the buildings that we design. And through designing buildings that are out there that people use, as architects, I think, we have sort of a heightened sense of civic duty, because an awful lot of those buildings are done for the public, and the public uses them on a daily basis. So, I think it's natural for architects and facility engineers to have that civic duty and that connection to things like this. And it's not a big step for us, to become concerned with these things and to discuss them amongst ourselves and to really share ideas about, what's going on and what do you think about this, that, and engineering points of view and architectural points of view, and hey, I saw this, have you seen it? No, let's learn more about this together, and it's that kind of dynamic.
Well, when you're talking about ethics and responsibility and what you're liable for, my mind goes back to the year 2001, before 9/11, and I remember that there was a wedding hall that had a floor collapse. This was in Israel, and it was really horrifying to watch because somebody had a VHS camera going, and you could see the people dancing, and they actually focused in on a baby's face that somebody was holding as they were dancing, and all of a sudden the floor just collapses, and I want to say at least 50 people, probably maybe even more, I'm not sure, just collapse into this hole, or just fall into this hole. And it was awful. And I was just Googling it here while you were talking, and it says the engineer, Eli Ron, was arrested and subsequently indicted in August of 2002 on the charge of manslaughter. Now, I know there's differences between architects and engineers and who's responsible for what and who's liable for what, but this goes to show you that people involved in making these buildings, at the very least, have an ethical obligation to look into these kinds of issues. We take this very seriously. Their work is taken very seriously because they're holding lives in them. And so when you have a few random office fires bring down a 47-story steel frame high rise in 7 seconds, when that should not happen. That should not happen. This is something that affects everybody. This is something we need to take just as seriously. Because, again, 9/11 is an event that people died from. I mean, mostly in the towers and in the airplane impacts, but overall. And so if there's any questions about this event, the American people deserve to have those questions answered openly and transparently. And what do you have to say about this? I'm always wanting to get people's perspective on this, but the fact that NIST has withheld data related to the computer models that they made to explain Building 7's alleged collapse. They withheld that computer data from Freedom of Information Act requests, saying that if they released it, it would jeopardize public safety. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, I don't see why it would. If there's something in there that would help professionals get to the bottom of why it happened the way it did, I think it should be more transparent than they're doing. And really, I think it's a very suspicious move, to withhold that kind of thing with all of the information that and data that we're capable of gathering about that kind of thing today with building information modeling and physics modeling, and to make detailed studies possible of any number of different scenarios when it comes to a structural collapse. That would be a very valuable tool, and I think that they know that, and so it's another part of the element of suspicion in my in my eyes, that they would keep that under wraps.
Right. I mean, everything that we do is out in the open. I mean, we have a weekly podcast that talks about everything that we're doing here at AE 9/11 Truth, even in times when there may be less going on than than other times. So, but in this case, they don't want to release the information for a building that no longer exists. And it's been said by Richard Gage when he was on C-SPAN, as I've heard many architects say, you need this information. You need to study why this building came down. Forget the whole controlled demolition thing. Let's just go with the official story for a moment. All right, we need to know why this building came down. We have to stop this from happening again in the future, because next time there could be people inside that this building comes down on the heads of. We don't want that. But so in this case, they've made the public less safe. They've jeopardized public safety more by withholding this data. Now, Jes, when you've talked to the other members of your AIA, you talked about this a little bit before, but you said that people have been generally receptive, have been open to this. What has been the overall reaction of just architects in general over the years when you've talked to them about this issue?
Long time ago, shortly after, or in the timeline proximity of when this happened, people didn't want to talk about it. It was just sort of a taboo subject, that they were just going to, whatever the news reported and the official, storyline was, that was that, and it was like, you shouldn't bring that into question. But the more momentum that the truth movement gets, and the information that's put together that you can research and go find, more people are really having conversations centered around especially the video evidence. Once people see that, it just kind of shatters the whole fall into line and not question the official story behavior. Once people see a few things like that start to sort of chink the armor, away from the official story, it starts, a cascade effect in my estimation, where people, once they start questioning one thing or the other, it just like it blows the whole story out of the water. And so now all of a sudden, you've almost got a clean slate, to start with there. And so people just tend to say, all right, let's back up. On one hand, this was reported, or this was said that this was the reason, but, here's this video, and what if this, and what if that? So it really just turns into a very open-minded exploration, of what different pieces of evidence mean, and how those, work against the official account of what actually happened. And, you just sort of start rebuilding the picture and the timeline, and sort of making up your own official story with your own observations and conclusions, and those of the people that you're talking about this stuff with.
So, Ted, I want to hear from you. What advantages are there in reaching out to local AIA groups that you may not have reaching out to the central leadership? Not saying that it shouldn't be, or that there's anything wrong with the central leadership, just saying what advantages are there in talking more intimately with local groups than just by talking to everybody as a whole?
Sure. So the way that the voting at the convention works is that all of these local chapters, whether they're a chapter or a section, and the state organizations, they're basically allocated delegate votes based on how big the chapter is, how many members they have. And so, for example, a chapter or a section like Asheville, which I sort of take to be kind of a medium-sized chapter, has something like 300 members. The voting is allocated such that you get roughly 15 votes for every, you get one vote for every 15 members. So Asheville represents something like 20 delegate votes. Some of the larger chapters, large cities like New York City, there's several hundred votes that would be allocated to just the Manhattan chapter. Whereas, as far as the voting goes at the convention, each member of like the board of directors and the strategic council of the national AIA as well as each state organization. Actually, if the state organization doesn't double as a local chapter, all of these bodies have only one vote, as compared to a medium-sized chapter which has 20 votes. So it's actually a very democratic process that really gives a lot of power and voice to the chapters, to the local AIA members all over the country. It also has a place for the national leadership to vote, but they have relatively few votes. So it seems like a great process in terms of empowering the voice of local chapters. And so we are busy reaching out to all of the local chapters and the state organizations, sending them brochures, sending them emails with the link to our website, which is WTC7resolution.org. We're based on our experience and based on the observations of people like Jes. We feel that we have a good chance of being able to educate enough people and getting this resolution passed. And so that's what we're working on, and we'll see where we get 2 weeks from now.
Now, I want to hear this from both of you guys. What do you guys each think the impact of such a resolution passing will be for AIA, for the architectural profession, for people in general?
Well, I think I said this a month ago when I was on the show, when we were first introducing the AIA resolution campaign to everyone, that my understanding of the situation with the AIA being the largest association of architects in the country, having 83,000 members, is that if it is passed and if the resolution is ratified by the board of directors, that it will really resonate within the profession. It may not be like the news of the day on every the headline on every single newspaper, but for a lot of people, architects in particular, but also the larger public, I think it'll be maybe a quiet tectonic shift, where it really becomes suddenly so much more acceptable to question the issue and to look at the evidence and talk about it. And maybe that if the resolution passes, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth will see a swelling of its petition signers. The number of architect petition signers will really skyrocket. But we also hope that it will reverberate beyond the architecture community. We think that and we hope that the mainstream media will pay some notice. The national AIA may not be rushing to really promote the fact that this resolution was passed, or that it has made it its official position to support a new investigation into the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7. That work is probably going to fall on our shoulders to get the word out that this resolution was passed. But in any case, yeah, it's hard to predict exactly, but we think it will be a tectonic shift for the issue and for the cause.
Yeah, I have to echo that. I mean, that's the main thing I was thinking when you asked the question, was that having that official resolution there, I think will, if people don't know about this or have forgotten about it over the years, it should remind them of it, and maybe it'll encourage more people to go do a little bit of research, or join up at the the website for Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and learn more about it now that that their professional organization has adopted a resolution of this magnitude. But yeah, I just see it as a numbers type of impact, an awareness impact.
Another thing I want to hear from both of you, because I hear about this a lot. I have people who will tell me that, I need to go into these bigger issues of 9/11, and you need to start getting into the core of who did it and all this stuff. And this audience knows my opinion on that, but I want to hear from you guys. Can you guys speak to the importance of sticking to the evidence and what's provable, and sticking to what is within people's, ability to question in terms of demanding a new investigation. Why is it important to avoid theorizing and speculation when presenting this information?
Well, it's just the rabbit hole syndrome gets in the way of some real, scientific approach with hard evidence and with things that have been proven already, with videos that can influence three-dimensional modeling and building information modeling of these incidents. There's a certain science, a math that can be followed, and you can be informed. With the theorizing, I think what you run into is a crazy idea comes up, and I shouldn't say crazy, just somebody has an idea, and then they might tend to build a case around that rather than really look hard at what is and what isn't true. An example that I could that comes to mind is like if you ever watch any crime drama or criminal investigative drama, somebody has a theory about how someone got murdered or how a crime was committed, and then from that point, if they buy into that too hard, their whole investigation is somewhat tainted because they're constantly looking for ways to shore that theory up rather than letting the crime scene and the evidence speak for itself. So I think, we really have to be juggling. If you're juggling, you can't hold on to a ball too long. You really have to keep them all moving. And ideally, you just want to let them freeze, let them all sit there and take a close look and not really hold on to any of them until you have enough real incontrovertible evidence to make decisions and observations and hold things out as tenets, in the case.
Yeah, and a lot of those crime dramas are designed to mislead you, too. You think that it's going to be one person. It obviously has to be this character, and then you get that twist at the end that it's somebody else. And that's kind of how real life works a lot of times. You can't go based off of initial assumptions. You got to stick to what you can prove, and of course to show that you aren't biased, that you stand for truth, and the truth lets the chips fall where they may. And so this is the scientific way of doing things. Ted, what are your comments on that?
Yeah, well, my major focus as an advocate for 9/11 truth is how to introduce the issue to people. So I'm, rather than being on the front lines of investigating what happened and analyzing the evidence, that's not where I do my work. So I come at this question from what is the most effective way for communicating with people, and I, without a doubt, focusing just on the evidence, trying to kind of hold it at arm's length from everything else, all the other associations and the pain of what happened on that day, and just look at the evidence, start with Building 7, ultimately in order to really shift public opinion on this issue, we are going to have to generate a sort of groundswell of authority and opinion based on expertise about what happened. And the area where the evidence is really the strongest is the destruction of the buildings. And so what we do at AIA 9/11 Truth is work to educate and hopefully mobilize the entire or large parts of the architecture and engineering fields to take the issue seriously. And when we do that, and when we use the evidence to educate people in those fields and reach out to people, mobilize people, that spills over to the general public. Thought leadership is a very powerful thing, and as more and more people in the architecture and engineering communities become familiar with this issue, comfortable with it, and willing to speak out on it, that will have, I believe, the greatest impact on shifting public opinion about 9/11.
So, Ted, what kind of events are going to be going on in and around Atlanta around the time of the conference?
We have a very busy schedule at the convention itself. The convention starts on May 14th and runs until the 16th. anybody that's in the area, we invite you to come and volunteer to be at our booth or sort of walking around the convention hall with our buttons. That everybody who's working at the booth and everybody that supports the resolution, who's at the convention, if they co-sponsored the resolution or if they come to our booth and they learn about the resolution, we're going to ask them to wear this button that says, "I support Resolution 15-6." And it has a photo sequence of Building 7 collapsing. The more people we have around the convention hall wearing those buttons, the better. It increases the visibility and the energy and the buzz about our resolution. And then on Saturday, May 16th, we are having an event that evening. This is after the convention ends, where Richard Gage will be speaking, giving his 9/11 Blueprint for Truth presentation. And that's happening at the Georgia Tech Student Success Center at 7 p.m. on Saturday evening. So we invite people to come to that. That's going to be, it's a relatively small space. It's probably going to be packed because it has something like 130 seats. But there's also overflow space right outside the auditorium where he's speaking, where the presentation will be aired on television screens. So we invite people to come to that as well.
Now, is this something that people will show up at and buy tickets? Can they buy tickets online for it?
Yeah, you can buy tickets. I can't remember the exact URL, but if you just Google sort of Eventbrite AE 9/11 Truth and something like Atlanta, you'll find it very easily. This we still have to get up on our website, which we will do in the next day or two. Probably by Thursday, by the time folks are listening to this, we will have a banner up on the website for this event. But okay, you can buy tickets on Eventbrite.
Okay, so there'll be a banner up on the website you mentioned before people can click the banner and find or buy the tickets for it. And just give us that website one more time.
Yeah, well, the website with the information about the resolution is WTC7resolution.org. And you can also go to AE911truth.org to get information about the speaking event on Saturday evening. And then, if you want to if you go right to the website where you can buy tickets for the event, it's going to be Eventbrite AE911 Truth. Just Google that.
Right, and if you send me that banner, I'll put it up on 911freefall.com too, so there'll be plenty of places for people to find this and buy the tickets. And it's important to go to events like this. I mean, you may have heard the controlled demolition evidence a million times, right? But when you go to things like this, first of all, you meet other like-minded people. I mean, why do I do so much with 9/11 Truth and know so many great folks? It's because I go to these things and I shake hands and meet folks, and I also make friends too at these things. So it's important to be around like-minded folks and get your batteries charged. So show that support and bring somebody with you. That's always the challenge that I put forth whenever these events come up, is to bring that friend that you've been talking to about this stuff for years and say, hey, here's the opportunity. Richard Gage is nearby. Let's go listen to the guy speak. Tell me what you think of his presentation. Make a night out of it. Have dinner before or after this event and talk about what you just seen if you go out afterwards. Ted, what can our listeners also do to help at this stage with this AIA effort? I mean, if you can't come to the conference, it might be far away. We might be talking to people in Washington State, for instance, who can't make it down to Georgia for this event. What can our listeners do at this point to help us out?
I would say the first thing is to share that the landing page for the campaign on Facebook and elsewhere. Email it to friends. That URL again is WTC7resolution.org. Especially if you have friends who are architects or who are members of the AIA, we really want them to know that this resolution is happening. The second thing that people can do is donate. We have raised funds to cover all of our costs for the convention, such as the booth and the accessories and the television screens that will be showing the video of the building collapse. But more funds help as far as being able to print brochures. We're still ultimately running at a loss with the convention. So also as of Saturday, we will be offering the button that I mentioned that everybody at the convention will be wearing. If you donate $25, you can get that button as a gift. It's a very powerful button just to wear because it shows the collapse sequence of the building. And for people that have already to this campaign, you can donate $15 and still get the button. So.
One thing I'd add to that is if you've never been to the annual convention and to the expo floor, it's huge. I mean, there is going to be a bunch of stuff going on there. It's very busy with, AIA voting and the AIA, the various town hall events they'll have around there. There's continuing education events going on the expo floor, along with the hundreds of exhibitors there from, all kinds of suppliers and consulting companies. So the other thing that I would add to what all those things that Ted said was, if you're going to wear the button, that's great. But also, when somebody asks about it, or even if they don't, say, grab them by the hand and say, hey, let me show you this, and then, take them over there to the booth, because it's quite possible, especially for those who go to concentrate more on the building tours and the educational sessions, for somebody never to even walk down, the aisle or the street or whatever you want to call it, where their booth will be set up. So make sure you kind of recruit people to go take a look at it.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. We'll definitely be focusing on that. One thing I do want to mention is that our booth will be right across from the AIA Town Hall, which is sort of the main place where all the voting happens, where delegates go to vote. It's kind of a meeting place, and we'll be right across from one of the theaters where all the educational workshops are done. And so it's a great spot to be at, and having more people outside of our booth walking around in those areas, help drawing people over to our booth, would be a huge help.
Well, you picked the right place. That's definitely a hot spot.
Well, this is a tremendous effort that you, Ted, and Jess, and all the other great volunteers involved are putting forth, and we're definitely going to keep our audience updated on what's going on with this very important vote at the AIA conference coming up in a few weeks. But guys, thank you so much for coming on 9/11 Freefall. This program's on every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download MP3s of this show from the Internet Archive by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.